You stared absent-mindedly at the coffee table before you, your head bowed, arms resting over your knees. Your eyes stung with unshed tears, but you refused to let them fall. Your mother's voice echoed once again through the silence inside your head. Dear, do you really think the boy who left you once will take care of you for a lifetime? Think about it, Yen. You're a sensible girl. Her words trailed off into a weary sigh, heavy with a mother's worry. You didn't say anything. How could you? The emotions churning inside you felt far too tangled to be given a voice. It had been almost 2 months since Jungkook and you got together again. It almost felt like a dream. Sneaking away from the office, those stolen kisses, the lingering glances exchanged from across the room, meant only for the two of you, unnoticed by everyone else. The work hadn't changed. If anything, it was just as relentless as before. But now, you had a life waiting for you beyond endless meetings and unfinished work. You had him. Once, you had wondered whether 4 years apart would change the two of you. Perhaps they had. Yet every teasing smile, every playful argument, every quiet laugh reminded you of the two foolish 20-year-olds who had once believed love alone was enough. That childlike spark, that effortless liveliness, you had thought it was lost forever. Instead, it had simply been waiting for the two of you to find your way back to each other. Your mother's voice pulled you from your thoughts once again. I know you have a soft spot for him, Yen. Her voice was soft, wrapped in the familiar warmth only a mother could offer. He's the only man you've ever loved. But marrying him? She sighed again, as though the very thought rested heavily upon her heart. That's a lifetime commitment, my baby. You have to think about everything. She scooted closer, gently brushing a loose strand of hair behind your ear. I know he's a kind boy. She hesitated. But ask yourself honestly, Yen, is it worth spending the rest of your life with a man who... Another pause. This time her voice was even softer. Who left you when life became difficult?
Your heart tightened at her words. It felt like someone was punching each of the words onto it. A man like that, she continued quietly. What if he does it again? What if the next hardship makes him choose to face it alone and leave you behind once more? She gently took your hand. Think about it, Yen. People don't change overnight. That was his instinct. To push you away. To carry everything by himself. What if one day she rubbed your hand gently, as if quietly soothing her thoughts into your skin? He decides you're better off without him again. A lone tear slipped silently down your cheek. Your mother wasn't entirely wrong. She had watched you spend 4 years piecing yourself back together, one shattered fragment at a time. She had seen the quiet tears you never let anyone else witness. The days you buried yourself in work because it hurt less than remembering. How could she not be afraid? And yet, somewhere along the way, perhaps as second nature, or perhaps simply as a woman hopelessly in love, you had stopped doubting him. You were willing to endure every scorching burn all over again, if it meant he would still be the one to return and soothe them. Should that frighten you? Should you be afraid that, after everything, he had quietly found his way back into every corner of your heart? that 4 years hadn't erased him from your heart. They had only shown you how deeply he'd always belonged there. Yen, your mother's voice softened even further. I know, dear. I know you want someone to share your dreams with, your life with. She offered you a faint, hopeful smile. I can introduce you to wonderful men. Men who will stand beside you. Men who could even strengthen your company. Her fingers gave your hand another gentle squeeze. Please, just think. Stop it, Mom. Your words barely rose above a whisper. Yet she fell silent immediately. You wiped away the tears before they could fall again, and slowly rose from the sofa. Taking a deep, steadying breath, you looked down at your mother. Your heart ached at the sight of her glistening eyes. Your voice never rose. It didn't have to. The quiet conviction within it spoke louder than anger ever could. Because anger had never been the problem. Helplessness over the situation was. It's useless talking about other men, Mom. A pause. You know very well Jungkook is the only man I've ever had in my heart. Your lips trembled into the faintest smile. And he'll be the only one who ever will. I know according to you he should have handled everything differently. I know you think he should have stayed. But Mom, your voice faltered. We were young. We were just kids. And never, not even once, did he leave me because loving me became difficult. Your voice trembled now. You hastily brushed away the fresh tears before they could blur your vision. He left me back then. Your words caught in your throat. Because he believed life would become easier for me without him. You gulped the knot forming around your throat, then continued. He pushed me away to protect me from the harshness life had thrown at him. It wasn't easy for him, Mom. It never was.
Your mother turned her face, wiping the tear that escaped her eyes, and your gaze dropped to the floor. I'm not saying he made the right choice. A quiet silence settled between you two. Then you gathered your strength again. But, believe me, your eyes found your mother's again, glistening with quiet conviction. He wasn't a cruel man trying to run away from the woman he loved. He was just a young boy, trying to survive. Your lips quivered into the faintest, bittersweet smile. Just like me, isn't it, Mom? I too was trying to hold on to us, and he was trying to hold his family together. We were both carrying burdens that were far too heavy for two 22-year-olds. Your mother lowered her gaze, and your heart clenched at the sight of the silent tears slipping down her cheeks. She didn't say anything. She simply sat there, quietly absorbing every word, every feeling. The room suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. You couldn't bear standing there any longer. Turning away, you spoke softly, almost to yourself. If you don't want Jungkook as your son-in-law, I'll understand. But please, your fingers curled into trembling fists at your sides. Don't decide which man I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life loving. Do you really think that girl will accept our family? Will accept Ji-hoon? Mr. Ji-hoon asked, shaking his head in disbelief. Are you out of your mind, Jungkook? And why do you think she won't? Jungkook asked quietly. His voice wasn't angry. It was tired. Tired in the way only a man could be after having the same argument one too many times. Are you kidding me, Jungkook? Mr. Ji-hoon scoffed. She is the CEO of a company. A successful, accomplished woman. She has a world completely different from ours.
Do you honestly think she'll have the patience, the motherly heart, to raise Jihoon as her own, let alone the time? He let out a humorless laugh. You wouldn't risk that little boy's future because of your own selfishness, would you? Jungkook's heart clenched. Selfishness? Was wanting to marry the only woman he had ever loved since the age of 20 truly selfish? His jaw tightened. Every instinct urged him to shout, to tell his father that you possessed the gentlest heart he had ever known, that you would never, ever let a child feel unwanted. But he knew better. Anger wouldn't make his father understand. It would simply give him a reason to stop listening. She doesn't have to mother Jihoon, Jungkook said at last, his voice calm but unwavering. Jihoon already has a mother, and Yen isn't the kind of person who would ever mistreat a child, father. Oh, my son. Mr. Jihoon threw his hands up in exasperation. See, you don't even think about Jihoon anymore. He's your brother's son, your own blood. And instead of protecting him, instead of giving him the secure childhood he deserves, what are you doing? His voice hardened. You're choosing to walk away from your responsibilities for the sake of a girl. He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head.
Jihoon calls you his father, Jungkook. Have you even stopped to think about that poor child? About what this will do to him? His voice rose with every word until it echoed through the living room and spilled into the hallway. You should have married Mia when I told you to. And I've told you 1,000 times that I won't. For the first time, Jungkook snapped with a loud groan. The force behind his voice startled even his father, who could only stare at him in stunned silence. But Jungkook didn't stop. The only woman I've ever dreamed of marrying, ever since I was 20, is Yen. His voice was steady despite the storm raging inside him. And no amount of guilt-tripping is ever going to change my decision. A sudden roughness settled into both his voice and his gaze. Mr. John couldn't quite place it. Was it defiance? Or something else entirely? He had never seen Jungkook like this before. There was anger in his son's eyes. But what unsettled him even more was the restraint behind it. As though every ounce of it was being held together by sheer will alone. As though if he let go, even he wouldn't be able to bear what came after. Guilt-tripping? Mr. John repeated, still recovering from the initial shock. Yes, father, guilt-tripping. That's what you've been doing to me ever since my brother died, haven't you? Mind your tongue, Jungkook. Mr. John turned cold. I only asked you to do what any responsible man of this family would. But you never listened, did you? You refused to marry Mia, even after that poor girl lost her family's support. His expression hardened. Have you ever once been ashamed of that? Jungkook tipped his head back, letting out a quiet, humorless laugh. Responsibilities, he repeated under his breath. And shamelessness. Slowly, he looked back at his father. Have you ever felt ashamed, father? A flicker of confusion crossed Mr. John's face.
Jungkook shook his head, a bitter smile tugging at the corner of his lips. I never once stepped away from my responsibilities as the younger son of this family. His voice remained steady. But have you ever felt ashamed for placing the responsibilities of your dead son on my shoulders? Jungkook! A wave of sheer, unadulterated rage marred Mr. John's face. No! Jungkook yelled, just as loud. And it sounded more of a wounded cry that had turned excruciatingly painful from years of suppression. No, father, listen to me. His voice rang through the house. I'm not your dead son. I'm not my brother. I'm not Jihoon's father. And I am definitely not Mia's husband. The words tore out of him, carrying years of grief, guilt, and quiet suffocation with them. Then, silence. A suffocating, deafening silence settled over the house. Mr. John stood frozen. It was as though all the strength had drained from his body at once. He simply stared at his son. Shock. Disbelief. I am none of those people, father. Jungkook's voice was hoarse now, rough around the edges after finally getting those suffocating thoughts out.
I'm Jungkook. A pause. I'm just a man who's in love with a woman. His eyes softened for the first time since the argument had begun. A man who lost the love of his life once, and somehow, he swallowed, somehow was given a second chance to have her back. He took a slow step back, never once breaking eye contact with his father. And I'm not letting her go this time. His voice wasn't loud. It was resolute. I fulfilled my responsibilities as the son of this family. Now, I'll fulfill them as a man.
It had been nearly a week since your conversation with your mother. You had given her all the time she needed to come to terms with the fact that you weren't letting Jungkook go this time. Your fingers moved swiftly across the keyboard as you typed out the report detailing Caredeep's current features. Your brows were furrowed in concentration, a pair of spectacles resting low on the bridge of your nose. Then, the sharp ding of your phone broke the silence. Almost instinctively, your eyes flickered toward the screen. Mom. You reached for your phone, the screen lighting up with your wallpaper. It was a picture of you, curled against Jungkook's chest. One of his arms wrapped securely around you, as he pressed a gentle kiss to the top of your head. You had seen the picture 100 times already, but it never failed to spread warmth through your chest. Your mind drifted back to that night in Busan. The night he'd quietly snuck into your hotel room, careful to avoid every watchful eye. Your first instinct had been to scold him for taking such a risk. But the moment he'd wrapped his arms around you and begun whining about how the two of you had never properly cuddled, your heart had surrendered without a fight. It had been one of the most peaceful nights of your life, lying on his chest, him running his fingers through your hair,
until you slowly drifted to sleep, lulled by the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath your ear. A deep blush crept onto your cheeks. Clearing your throat, you gently shook the memory away and finally looked down at your mother's message. Your heart skipped a beat. Bring him over for dinner tonight. I want to talk to him. You stared at the screen. Then your eyes widened. Oh my God. A rush of happiness coursed through your entire body. For a split second, you nearly jumped out of your chair to run straight to Jungkook's office. Then common sense caught up with you. You slowly sat back down. That would be incredibly unprofessional. Instead, you picked up your office phone and called Leah, asking her to send Jungkook to your office when he was free. The two of you had been so careful, determined to keep your personal relationships separate from your professional lives. Even when no one was around, you had resisted the urge to steal a hug or linger in his warmth for just a little longer. But not today. Today, for one selfish moment, you wanted him here. You couldn't wait until office hours were over. Moments later, a soft knock echoed through the room. Come in.
The door clicked open. Jungkook stepped inside, his brows knitting together in quiet confusion as his eyes searched the office. Before he could even turn toward you, your arms slipped around his waist from behind, hugging him with all the strength your heart had been holding back. You felt him freeze for the briefest second. Then, a quiet chuckle escaped him as he relaxed completely into your embrace, his hands coming up to rest gently over yours. So, he mused, I thought there was a strict, no hugging, no kissing inside office premises policy, CEO ma'am. You let out an offended whine. I told you not to call me that. Ever since you'd confessed how much you loved hearing the affectionate names he called you, Jungkook had made it his personal mission to do the exact opposite whenever he wanted to tease you. We're alone right now, you said quietly. Are we? Still smiling, he carefully loosened your grip before turning to face you. The moment his eyes met yours, they softened, almost instinctively.
His fingers reached up, tucking a loose strand of hair behind your ear. So, the CEO makes exceptions to her own policies? Before you could answer, he leaned down and brushed the gentlest kiss against your lips. Your eyes widened. You immediately glanced toward the closed office door. Jungkook. You smacked his arm, lowering your voice into a frantic whisper. Not here. I told you there are rules. He pretended to consider it. Is that so? The corner of his mouth curved upward. Because from where I'm standing, he took one slow step toward you. You're the one who broke the rules first. Instinctively, you took a step back. I did not. Oh? His eyes danced with amusement. You called one of your employees into your office. For completely personal reasons. And before that poor employee could even ask why, another step. His boss attacked him. I hugged you. You tried to sound firm. It didn't quite work. You absolutely assaulted my ribs. He placed a dramatic hand over his chest. I'm fairly certain I heard at least 2 of them crack. Jungkook. You tried glaring at him over the rim of your spectacles. It would have been much more convincing if you hadn't been smiling. His own smile softened. Then he closed the remaining distance between you until barely a breath separated the 2 of you. Your eyelids fluttered, your gaze instinctively dropping to his lips. Then, a soft click echoed through the room. Your breath caught. Only then did you realize he'd quietly locked the door, and somehow, in those few stolen moments, he'd already backed you against it. You drew in a slow breath, expecting another fleeting kiss.
Instead, he slipped an arm around your waist and gently guided you backward until your back met the wall. Walls are better, he murmured, less chance of anyone overhearing us. Before another thought could cross your mind, his lips claimed yours with a tenderness that somehow carried unbearable hunger beneath it. Warmth unfurled low in your stomach as his lips moved slowly against yours, patiently, as though he had all the time in the world, yet could never seem to get enough of you. You were so lost in him that you didn't even notice him pull away for the briefest moment, only to slide your spectacles from your face. He hummed softly against your lips. These were getting in my way. Then he kissed you again, deeper this time. Your fingers instinctively tangled in his hair, a quiet whimper escaping you before you could stop it. Every kiss lingered longer than the last. Every pause only made the next one harder to resist. Lately, he always kissed you like this, as though every kiss only deepened the ache of having lost you once, as though no matter how many times he held you, it would never quite be enough. And perhaps you were no different. The longing between the 2 of you had only grown stronger with time, but neither of you crossed that invisible line. Not yet. Your chest rose and fell against his as he gently tilted your chin, deepening the kiss ever so slightly. Jungkook felt everything. The tiny shiver that ran through you, the warmth of your body pressed against his, the way your fingers absent-mindedly combed through his hair, the quiet breaths you shared between kisses, the soft sounds that escaped you whenever he lingered just a little longer. Everything about you tested the limits of his restraint. If he continued like this, he wasn't sure he'd want to stop. Reluctantly, he drew one last slow breath, as though trying to memorize your scent.
Then, with visible effort, he pulled away and rested his forehead against yours. The 2 of you stood there, breathing a little harder than before. His eyes, still heavy from the kiss, slowly wandered across your face. He loved this version of you. The faint blush blooming across your cheeks, your lips, softened and just a little swollen, the faint trace of lipstick smudged at the corner of your mouth. A smile tugged at his lips as he gently wiped it away with his thumb. You blinked. Then your eyes widened when you caught him casually licking the lipstick from his thumb. "What are you doing?" you asked, instinctively catching his wrist. His eyes met yours, mischief swimming within them.
No wonder I can never stop kissing you. Heat rushed straight to your face. You taste dangerous, sweetheart. Unable to bear the intensity in his gaze any longer, you lowered your eyes, staring at his chest as it rose and fell beneath your fingertips. Jungkook noticed immediately. With a gentle finger beneath your chin, he lifted your face until your eyes met his again. What happened, baby? His voice softened. You didn't like it? You shook your head almost immediately. No, it's not that. Your fingers absent-mindedly fumbled with the fabric of his shirt while he waited in silence, patiently, for you to find the words. I was just thinking, he hummed softly, encouraging you to continue, that something has changed, hasn't it? His brows drew together ever so slightly as his hands cupped your face. What has? You hesitated before answering in a voice barely above a whisper. Our kisses. The moment the words left your lips, his expression melted. Both hands came up to cradle your head, smoothing your hair in a comforting manner. Hey, his forehead rested lightly against yours. Was I too much for you? Not that. I told you I liked it. You smiled shyly. It's just... You searched for the right words. It wasn't like this when we were together back in college. Your eyes searched his. Don't you feel it too? Understanding immediately softened his features. Of course he knew. He smiled before pressing a lingering kiss to your forehead. Oh, baby. He pulled back just enough to look into your eyes. We were kids then. Now? A teasing smile slowly curved his lips. We're adults. Leaning closer, his hands once again found the small of your back. Then he brushed the lightest kiss against the shell of your ear. And it turns out adults have far less self-control when they're in love. Heat rushed to your cheeks.
You gave his shoulders a light shove, trying and failing to hide your flustered expression. Since when did you become this shameless? He only looked at you, utterly unrepentant. Around the time you started kissing me back like that. Your eyes widened. Jungkook? His laugh, low and satisfied, echoed softly through the room. As his warmth finally left you, your gaze instinctively drifted to the wall clock. Your heart nearly stopped. 20 minutes. 20 whole minutes had passed since Jungkook had walked into your cabin. Oh my God. Your eyes flew back to him, and your heart skipped at the sight before you. His third and fourth shirt buttons hung undone, revealing just enough of his toned chest to make your cheeks burn. The crisp shirt that had been neatly tucked into his trousers when he'd arrived now hung carelessly loose. Oh no. Your hands immediately flew to his shirt, hurriedly fastening the buttons. What did I even do to you? Jungkook burst into laughter. A warm, unrestrained laugh that only made your embarrassment worse. Then your gaze landed on his lips. Your lipstick. It was smudged all over them. Both your hands flew to your mouth, your eyes widening in disbelief. Did we actually manage to smudge my smudge-proof lipstick? He looked thoroughly amused. Looks like we did. A grin spread across his face. You should probably leave them an honest review. Oh, shut up. You tried to glare at him, though the corners of your lips betrayed you. This is exactly why I keep telling you not to do this in the office. Oh, come on. You have to admit. His smile turned positively boyish. It was worth breaking one tiny rule. As you fastened the last button of his shirt, Jungkook's hands quietly found your blouse, where it had slipped off your shoulder, revealing the delicate strap of your bra. He gently pulled the slipped fabric back over your shoulder before smoothing it into place. His touch was careful, almost absent-minded, like taking care of you had become second nature. He then retrieved your spectacles from his pocket, carefully unfolding them before placing them back on your face. There, his smile lingered. Now my beautiful CEO looks composed again. You rolled your eyes playfully. Jungkook chuckled quietly before walking over to your desk. He dampened the corner of his handkerchief with a few drops of water and returned to stand before you once more. Without a word, he gently wiped away the lipstick he'd left smudged around the corners of your mouth. His movements were slow, meticulous, almost as though he was reluctant to erase the evidence of a moment he'd enjoyed far too much. When he was finally satisfied, he leaned back, studying your face with unmistakable fondness. So, his eyes met yours. Did you really call me here just for this? Realization washed over your face.
Oh, you slapped your forehead lightly. I completely forgot. Jungkook raised an amused brow. My mom texted me. Your smile grew brighter before you could stop it. She wants you to come over for dinner tonight. His hand froze. For a heartbeat, he simply stared at you. She does? You nodded so enthusiastically that a laugh almost escaped you. Yes, I called you because... You smiled sheepishly. I just couldn't wait until evening to tell you. Something flickered across his face. Relief. Disbelief. Gratitude. He let out a slow breath, only then realizing he'd been holding it. Closing his eyes for a brief moment, he laughed quietly to himself before pulling you into another hug. This one lingered. Thank you so much, baby. You smiled against his shoulder, gently rubbing his back. What are you thanking me for? You looked up at him. You were always going to meet your girlfriend's mother someday. He pulled back just enough to look at you, the brightest grin spreading across his face. Girlfriend? He shook his head with mock disapproval. Future wife. The words rolled off his tongue with such certainty that your heart fluttered. Then he suddenly looked as though he'd remembered something. Oh, I have preparations to make. He began counting on his fingers. The bouquet. The gifts I ordered.
And I should probably change into something nicer. His excitement was so genuine that you couldn't help smiling. I'll see you this evening, baby. You stood there watching until the door closed quietly behind him. Only then did a thought finally catch up with you. He'd already prepared the gifts? A smile slowly spread across your face. Of course he had. Shaking your head with quiet amusement, you returned to your desk. Somehow, the rest of the workday suddenly felt longer than it was. So, did you just drop out of college, Jungkook? Your fingers twitched around the ceramic bowl you had been about to lift. Jungkook noticed immediately. Almost instinctively, his hand reached out first, taking the bowl from you. His fingers brushed yours in a quiet gesture of reassurance, before he turned toward your mother with a polite smile. I did, he admitted. But 2 years later, once I was financially stable, I completed my exams and graduated. Your eyes never left him. You knew this wasn't easy. Yet, throughout the evening, he never missed a single opportunity to make your mother feel valued. Every gift he'd brought, the bouquet, the books, the shawl, the fruits, everything reflected the care with which he'd chosen them. He hadn't asked for your opinion even once. He'd simply remembered every little thing you'd absent-mindedly mentioned over the years about what your mother liked. Only now did you realize how often you had spoken about her. The warm glow spilling from the ceiling lights softened the sharpness of his features as his gaze quietly shifted between you and your mother, attentive to every word she spoke. Your mother hummed thoughtfully, her eyes lowering to her plate before lifting to meet his once more. You know, YN has always been ambitious. A small pause followed. She has worked incredibly hard to build the life she has today. Her gaze remained steady. Would it never bother you if one day she couldn't devote herself to taking care of you or your family? Your eyes instinctively searched Jungkook's face. There wasn't the slightest hint of defensiveness, only quiet thoughtfulness. Ma'am, he began gently, I know how demanding her work is.
A small smile touched his lips. And I couldn't be prouder of everything she's achieved. His eyes found yours for only a heartbeat before returning to your mother. I believe my responsibility as her partner is to make sure she never feels forced to choose. His voice softened. Not between me and her work. A brief pause. Not between family and her dreams. Your mother quietly shook her head before taking a small sip of water. Your heart thudded heavily inside your chest as you waited for her next question. You knew this wasn't easy for her either. This wasn't suspicion. It was protection. It was the only way she knew how to make sure the man sitting across from her truly understood the weight of loving you. Don't you think that's quite a promise, Jungkook? She asked gently. Especially when you have a little boy depending on you. Her voice never rose, yet the quiet firmness beneath it was impossible to miss. Jungkook had known this question would come eventually, and he wasn't offended in the slightest. He lowered his gaze to his plate for a brief moment, collecting his thoughts before answering. Ji-hoon? A small smile found his lips at the mention of the little boy's name. He's very dear to me. When he looked back at your mother, there wasn't an ounce of hesitation in his eyes. I've never thought of him as a burden. Looking after him was never something that was forced upon me. It was a choice I made because I wanted to be a part of his childhood after he lost his father. His voice remained calm, steady. But I would never expect Yen to share that responsibility unless it was something she genuinely wanted. There was no bitterness in his tone, no resentment, only quiet sincerity. Ji-hoon has his mother, Mia Nuna. He smiled softly. She's one of the strongest women I've ever known, and she's never once taken my help for granted. She never expected more than I could give. Your breath caught. You knew. Over the past few weeks, you'd come to know Mia, and somewhere along the way, you'd grown to admire her deeply. You still remembered the warmth of her hug, and the relief in her eyes, the way she had gently rubbed your hand, thanking you for choosing Jungkook again, despite the complexities. You both had talked for hours, and still remained in touch. So you certainly knew the moment she'd found her footing again, she'd quietly moved into a studio apartment and chosen to raise Ji-hoon on her own. Never once had she asked Jungkook, or even his father, for more than they could realistically offer. She had carried her own burdens with quiet dignity. You knew Jungkook respected her deeply. There was something about her that drew people in, a gentle warmth that couldn't be taught, the kind of tenderness that carried the quiet wisdom of someone who had spent a lifetime caring for others. And Ji-hoon, you had grown incredibly fond of that little boy. Hearing him spoken of as though he were a burden made something deep inside your chest ache. But you remained silent. This conversation wasn't yours to interrupt. It belonged to Jungkook and your mother. Stepping in now would only make it seem as though you were trying to shield him from the difficult questions. No, you wanted them to know each other without your interference, to understand each other, for them to see the people you loved through their own eyes. As the dinner carried on, you noticed the change so gradually that it almost escaped you. Jungkook never tried to convince your mother with grand promises or carefully rehearsed words. Instead, he did what he always had. He let his actions speak for him. Through the warmth in his answers, through the patience with which he listened, through the quiet smile that never quite left his face. Meanwhile, your mother noticed the little things. The way Jungkook instinctively leaned across the table to place your favorite dishes onto your plate before serving himself. The warmth that settled into his eyes whenever they found you. And how not once, not even accidentally, did he sound threatened by the fact that you earned more than he did. If anything, she heard nothing but quiet pride whenever he spoke of you. And now?
She watched as his gaze followed you until you disappeared into your room, excusing yourself to attend an urgent call from the office. The moment your bedroom door clicked shut, the room grew noticeably quieter. For the first time that evening, Jungkook and your mother were alone. They now sat facing one another across the living room, the untouched cups of tea between them slowly losing their warmth. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. Then your mother broke the silence. "You really love my daughter, don't you?" The question caught him off guard. Heat quietly climbed to the tips of Jungkook's ears as a shy smile tugged at his lips. He lowered his eyes for a moment before giving a small nod. "I do." There wasn't the slightest hesitation in his answer, but the softness in the room lasted only a heartbeat. "Then tell me," your mother's voice remained calm. "How do I trust my daughter with you?" The words landed harder than he had expected. The color slowly drained from his face. His lips parted instinctively before closing again. He swallowed. Have I done something to disappoint you, ma'am?" Your mother looked at him for a long moment. Then she let out a quiet breath. "Oh," a faint, almost sorrowful smile touched her lips. "You have." The living room fell silent once more. "You see," her fingers tightened around the teacup resting in her lap. "I've been raising Yen alone ever since she was 7. A pause. Her father left us. She lowered her eyes to the tea, her thumb absent-mindedly tracing its rim. He wasn't strong enough to face the debts he'd buried himself in, so he walked away. And he never came back. Something inside Jungkook seemed to stop. You had never spoken about your father, not once, and he had never asked. He left? The words escaped him almost inaudibly. Your mother slowly lifted her gaze to meet his. A quiet sadness lingered there. "Why are you surprised, dear?" Another pause. "Didn't you do the very same thing to my daughter?"